Hey guys, with Kitasen Black coming soon, and Cygames tweeting out when supporter cards are going to be released at the start of every month, you might begin looking for guides on whether you should pull on a banner or not. In this video, I want to teach you how to make your own decision on the strength of a supporter card. Let's go over all the different bonuses and skills that a supporter card can give, and what makes something meta. This is not a tier list, but rather the information that you should know about why certain supporters are stronger than others. We can see the total effect of our supporter deck by clicking on the perks button right here. You can even see all the potential skills that you can acquire from hints and events on the second tab. Let's move over to GameTora's compare tool. We will begin with everything at max limit break, but I will move these limit break numbers around since it's very unlikely that you'll have a max limit break SSR this early in the game without swiping your credit card. Let's first go over what each of these stats do and understand what we are comparing. Each supporter card will have a unique effect that can affect any one of these stats. For example, Kitasen Black will increase the effectiveness of training when performed together by 5% and increase the frequency at which the character is in their training type. In this case, it would be speed. This unique effect is unlocked at level 30 for SSRs and level 25 for SRs. Any free SSR will, however, need 40 levels to unlock their unique effect. Before we go over each bonus, let me show you the formula for calculating how much stats you get from a training. Stat training is calculated by the base plus the stat bonus. This number is what gets multiplied. The multipliers will be the character's stat bonus, the number of supporter cards, motivation or mood multiplier, training multiplier, and finally, friendship multiplier, which is commonly referred to as rainbow training. Starting off with character's stat bonus, let's use Ogre Cap and her 20% speed bonus as our example. Each character is assigned up to 30% of stat bonuses spread across the 5 stats, with any alternate costume having different bonuses. Ogre Cap's original costume has a 20% in speed and 10% in power. Her Christmas alternate outfit, however, has 15% in speed and 15% in stamina. So let's look at the first calculation. If we were to get a base of 12 speed from training, the original Ogre Cap will have a speed gain of 14.4, which will then become 14. If you compare this to her Christmas outfit, Ogre Cap gets a speed gain of 13.8, which becomes 13. Cygames truncates the number after the calculation, so imagine that anything past the decimal just disappears. There is no rounding. It won't be truncated at this point in the calculation, but rather after all of the multipliers. This is just for an example. Next up, we have the number of supporter characters that show up on the training. Each supporter character, the portrait that shows up on the right side, can contribute 5% to the multiplier, with a maximum value of 25%, or a 1.25 times bonus. This bonus does not care if the supporter is not at their specialty stat. So for example, the Super Creek here still applies this 5% bonus to Wit, even though she is a stamina card. It does not care even if it was a friend or group support card, or even if it was just from the scenario. As long as there is a portrait on the right side, it will add this 5% bonus. With a maximum value of 25, it's still extremely hard to get the 5 supporters on one event. There was that one mission during the release missions that was pretty hard to get. In the past 2 runs that I've done, I have yet to see a 5 supporter. This is why my screenshot here only has 4. Now that we got those 2 out of the way, we can finally move on to the supporter card effects. First up, we have the friendship bonus. This is the multiplier that is active when you reach 80 bond with your supporter card. This can be increased either from their events or by training with them. You can visually know when a supporter is ready by the bar turning orange under their portrait. So for example here, Fine Motion is ready, whereas Special Week still needs 1 more training. A higher bonus means a higher final stat increase when you train with a rainbow training. Having 2 of these rainbow trainings makes it multiplicative. So for example, if you had Kitasen Black and Special Week offer you a rainbow training at the same time, the total bonus would be 1.6875 times, not a 1.6 times. This is one of the reasons why you want to run multiple copies of one stat in your deck. Now let's add 1 more speed supporter. As usually, you will run 3 of these cards in your deck. We will add the 42 from Sakura Bakushin here, making the total come out to 2.39 times. You can see how the multiplicative property of this increases your bonus by quite a bit, which is why you should be chasing those multi-rainbows. Mood effect is another multiplier on the stats that you are training. This gives a multiplier to the multiplier for your current motivation. So if we look at all the mood bonuses, we can see that it goes from 1.2 times to 0.8 times. If multiple of this effect are present, the effects will be additive. So going back to our example, Ketis and Black and Special Week offer a 1.6 times to the multiplier if trained together. Now this 1.6 times does not apply to your stat gain directly, but to the mood multiplier itself. So with Great Mood, the mood multiplier will change from 1.2 times to 1.92 times. This ends up being a little bit weaker than Friendship Training, so it does not have as big of an impact on the strength of a supporter card compared to the Friendship bonus. However, this can apply to any of the stats and is not locked to the one stat like Friendship Training is. Do note that if you have a negative mood, the mood effect will lower the amount of stats you can gain, so try and have your motivation at least at yellow if you have a lot of these effects in play. Supporter cards can also have the stat bonus increase. These give that many number of points to that stat-based training value, before all the multipliers are applied. This will apply to all trainings that increase the stat. So for Special Week, if you trained Speed, Guts, or Wisdom, it will still increase that base stat by 1. If your multipliers are high, this can impact the final stat gain by quite a bit. But if it's just the supporter card by itself, it isn't that big of an increase. This is more so for the extremely RNG triple and quintuple rainbow trainings that can happen. Let's do a simple calculation for everything right now to see the difference that one stat bonus makes. Here, it may only seem like a difference of 4, but this adds up over all the training that you will do, so don't look down on it. Training effectiveness is the last multiplier that we want to look at. This is extremely powerful because it applies to everything, even if you're not training the specialty stat of the supporter card. As long as you see that character portrait on any of the stat trainings, this multiplier will apply. The only drawback is that this is an additive bonus, so the best it can reach is usually about a 2 times for a quintuple training, as opposed to the high limit of 3 time multiplier of rainbow training. Initial stat up works exactly how you think it does. It directly increases the corresponding stat of your character by this number at the start of a training session. Not that many cards will carry this, and it isn't really something to look out for, just think of it as a bonus. Starting bond up, however, is extremely useful, as it directly adjusts the starting bond gauge of the supporter card, instead of having to work all the way up from 0. This is another reason why Ketis and Black is so disgusting. An initial friendship gauge of 35 at max limit break practically means that you get to skip out on 5 trainings with her without a rainbow training. Another one of the more useless effects, we have race bonus and fan bonus. This applies only to the rewards from a race, which is the random stat and amount of skill points you will get. If multiple of this effect are active, the effect will be additive. You don't really need to look out for this, most supporter cards will have around the same amount. We will get back to the hint level and hint frequencies when I talk about skills, so let's move over to special priority, the final reason why Ketis and Black is what every experienced player wants you to have in your decks. This gives a multiplier to the chance of seeing the support card in training of their specialty stat. The base chance of a character appearing in their specialty stat is around 18%, so having 120 from the unique effect in this, Ketis and Black gets a 39.6% chance to show up at speed. Comparing this to the Welfare card of Special Week, at a 23.4%, we can see why Ketis and Black is so much better. The only problem with this is that this large number only comes from later limit breaks, so pray that you're lucky when rolling. Now we can talk about hint levels and hint level frequencies. With hint level bonuses, the skills granted by the hints from this supporter cards will increase by the number in this bonus. This means that you will have to use fewer skill points when obtaining the skill. With 2 levels in hint bonuses, Ketis and Black's extremely useful universal skills are cheaper to pick up. Looking at her hint skills, we can see Corner Adept, which is a prerequisite to her gold skill, Professor of Curvature, and Corner Recovery, the prerequisite of Super Creek's Swinging Maestro. Focus can also be a good skill to pick up to make your starts consistent if you have skill points left over from all these discounts. Hint rate up increases the chances of finding these hints, shown by a red exclamation point. The base chance of a hint appearing is 7.5%, and the number shown will be a multiplier of 5%. So for Ketis and Black's case, it brings the total to 7.5% plus the 1.5%, or a 9% total. There's one more effect that I didn't make a slide for, and that is the skill point bonus. This doesn't really affect much, and rarely does a supporter card have this effect, but it will increase the amount of skill points you get from training by 1. Usually, if you want more skill points, you can look towards the race rewards bonus and do more races during your training. Before I end the explanation portion, we need to look at the Wisdom and Friend supporters. There are 5 exclusive effects that these can carry. For Wisdom supporters, during Wisdom training only, this will add the amount of energy recovery to the base amount of 5. This is one of the reasons why people carry a copy of Fine Motion in their deck, as at max limit break, the amount of recovery you can get from Wisdom training doubles with just one supporter. For Friend and Group supporters, we have Event Recovery, Event Effectiveness, Failure Protection, and Energy Cost Reduction. These are self-explanatory, and I don't really recommend pulling for these supporters unless you have excess spending money. These Friend supporters usually want to be used during the scenario they are in, so unless you can max limit break these cards every 6 months with around $600 to $800, it is not worth pulling. Try and find an Oil Baron to borrow this from if the rest of your deck is good. Altogether, you can think of supporter cards buffing these 5 main effects: the bonus stat multiplier, training mechanics, skills, race rewards, and others. Now that we know what every effect does, let's compare the supporter cards. Personally, my ranking for the effects of a supporter card usually goes in this order. I first look at the specialty rate and friendship bonus. It is up to you to decide which one is more valuable. A higher friendship bonus is more RNG, while having a higher specialty rate makes it a little bit more consistent. Next, you should look at if it gives you a stat bonus. Even though 1 point may not look like much, because this is applied before any multipliers, it can climb to some pretty high numbers. At a plus 12 for a basic training, an extra stat can be seen as a blank guarantee of about 7 to 8% bonus to any training in that stat. Next, I rate Initial Friendship Gauge and Mood Effect around the same level. Mood Effect is another multiplier, albeit not as strong as a friendship bonus, and is still good as it applies after the multiplier of said friendship bonus. Initial Friendship Gauge gets you to that rainbow training that much faster, letting you see more chances for the rainbow. And maybe letting you not have to do as much as the other training skills just to up your bond. Perhaps one of the first things you should look out for later on, once you have some strong inheritances and staple cards, is the skills that they can provide. For example, Kidison Black offers that universal skill that can activate at any quarter. This is miles better than the skill that the Welfare Special Week Speed card offers you, because it only applies to pace chasers. As more and more support cards come out, you will want to cater your skills to the exact style that your Uma is running. I only really look at the rest of the bonuses if the power level of 2 supporter cards are similar, and GameTora will allow us to compare them at levels that you have the cards at. Now we can finally compare the different cards after understanding everything that a supporter card can offer. I will be using the speed supporter cards as my example. Let's move over to the other tab for now. As we can see, most of the power of these supporter cards will come from limit breaking them, with a lot of it backloaded on the 4th copy. In this example, I will assume that we do not have many copies of these supporter cards, as we have yet to get limit break crystals introduced into the game. Using my ranking system, we can see that Special Week is actually stronger or even on par with some of these 0 limit break SSRs. Unfortunately, for the current banner, Twin Turbo has a low friendship bonus, and her skills only affect frontrunners, so I would rank that card lower than these other 3. Now you may be wondering why I have this SR supporter card right here. This is to show that sometimes a max limit break SR card, which is significantly easier to obtain, can be as good or even better than some SSR cards that have not been limit broken even once. So don't look down on the SR cards that you have been collecting as you are pulling on these supporter banners. Linked on the screen is another one of my videos where I go over why Kidison Black is the undisputed meta card to pull during these early months of the game. It also goes over what your odds are to pull multiple copies, so check it out if you need an example of my in-depth thoughts on supporter strength. Thank you for watching, like and comment any questions you have, and good luck trading your Uma Musumes.